Mr. Salapore, you've described several significant events since you came forward with your claims. One was the nail in the tire. You described your life was being threatened. Do you feel that this style of retaliation against you has been part of Boeing's efforts to silence and prevent you from sharing your story?
I think the retaliation, somebody even was calling me on my personal phone, time after time. This is my personal phone,
Well, what
and
were they saying?
Well, my boss was calling me there, and for 40 minutes, he kind of berated me and chewed me out. I have a work phone that he can use, but he's calling you on your personal phone, and it reminds me of, people who they stalk people or something like that. They call you on your personal phone to let you know that they know where you live, they know where you are, and they can hurt you. And, after the threats and after this, it's like, it really scares me. Believe me, but I am at peace. If something happens to me, I am at peace because I feel like by coming forward, I will be saving a lot of lives, and I'm at peace. Whatever happens, it happens.
Well, we certainly do appreciate you coming forward and certainly the brave and courage it takes for all of you to do this. Yeah. Do you think that there was a culture of retaliation against whistleblowers at Boeing?
Absolutely. And also, there's a culture of when you address the quality issues, and that's all I have done. I haven't made it personal. All I've done is said, hey, we are not measuring the gaps properly. We are not shimming the gaps properly. Then, you get threatened and this and that. All I'm trying to say is that system needs to be changed.
Do you still have your job?
I have my job. The only reason I have my job because I had my attorneys. We filed for the whistleblower system before I spoke up this time.
What's it like when you go back to work?
Well, last time, if you can think of it, I went to a meeting on the 777, and I brought up my concern in that meeting to say that the way we build in that airplane, it does not correlate to what the design of the airplane is. Because of that, we are resulting in a lot of misfares, misfares and a lot of problems. After 300 plus airplanes, we should be able to make that airplane. And my boss sent somebody to the meeting, pulled me out of the meeting, and called me on the phone and says, I throw the person under the bus by asking the question, what are we doing to make our design compatible with our build system to overcome these, mislocated holes and this and that. And then he says, what was my intention? And really berated me. And a week later, he was going to talk about that again. I thought, it's resolved, but a week later, he was talking to me about that. Why should you even be prosecuted for something that, all you're doing is saying, hey, the design that we used to have, we went to determinate assembly, right. It's not working. What can we do? Have you guys thought about anything to bring that so that they are compatible?
So your intention was to build a safe airplane?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not with force.
I want to try to understand this.
Okay.
The diagram that you all supplied us, this is a Boeing 787.
Yes.
And you're talking about where these joints come together.
Yes, I'm talking about the one on the most forward between, right there, and one in the aft. That's a 4143. No, the one this way.
This one,
right.
Between that and the nose.
That's a 4143. It's a major joint. And then one on the aft.
So instead of shimming them, they're basically just using force to bring them together, and you're concerned that it hurts the composite.
Well, it just violates every one of our common practices. Okay. Because you don't force stuff together, because when you force stuff together, you increase the stress concentration on that. If you think of a paper clip, if you bend it back and forth, after a little while, it breaks.
Yeah, speaking of action, that's what I want to talk next about is action. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with NIAR at Wichita State University, the National Institute of Aviation Research. They specialize in aerospace R&D, including composite advanced materials, and they do wind tunnel testing, where they would take an entire wing, an entire fuselage from a plane like this and stress test it. Mr. Jacobson, do you feel like that type of stress? I want to get we have different opinions, but that's where I would have confidence, and America would have confidence if there was stress testing, take some of these randomly and do that stress testing, or maybe it's already been done, I don't know.
Well, I'm not a structure specialist, so I can't really comment on the details of any of those sort of, hypotheticals. But I mean, in general, all of this, there's design, then there's testing, there's quite a process, and you can't violate any part of that process. If you violate,
Okay, I'm sorry, but is anybody else familiar with NIAR and that type of stress testing where you put them in, do wind tunnel testing on these? I just think that that's the action that I would have confidence in as a scientist who have tested thousands of jets and airplanes and are experts in composite to see exactly if this is a challenge or not. I think that would be a great answer to this question. That's action. Go ahead, Mr. Salvatore.
One thing that I want to, the issue that we're talking about is pressurizing the fuselage from the inside.
Okay.
When you pressurize and depressurize, basically, we call it flight cycle. Every time you go up and you come down, that's one flight cycle.
I'm sure that we can reproduce that at NIAR. So I think it's a great
Yeah.
point, though. And lastly, my last question is, it feels like the FAA and the DOT has dropped the ball as well here, though. Mr. Pearson, go ahead. And this is the action.
I'm sorry, it was the DOT and the
FAA.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, people don't understand. The FAA is a subordinate agency to the Department of Transportation, and as the FAA has been struggling with revolving leadership and everything else, there's been numerous opportunities for the Department of Transportation to get involved and engaged. And what we've seen from them is nothing. They just kind of are on the sidelines.
So to me, the action would be to ask the staff to sit down with the FAA and the DOT and the people and some type of report. We can't bring them in here for another 6-hour hearing, but I would love to see a little bit more report on how they would defend themselves. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator, if I could just add, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but we met with the head of the FAA and the Deputy of Secretary of Transportation in March 8th. Our foundation did, and we met with them, and we went through 35 problems, and we made recommendations to each one, and we said we offered to assist whatever we could because we want them to be successful. But they need to get in the game, is all I can tell you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Marshall.